13, Basic and Principle of the ECG. In today's lecture, we'll be discussing about the nomenclature of the ECG. Nomenclature of the ECG. First, under nomenclature of ECG, we'll be discussing these following topics. Number one, ECG graph. What is the ECG graph? The second, definition of the wave, as well as assigning of the wave. Number two. The third one that we will discuss here, significance of ECG deflections. In addition to that, we also have got planned to discuss about the PR interval, PR segment, TP segment, RT segment, and ST segment, and TP segments. And then we will also discuss about the intervals. Right now we will start from the ECG graph. What is the ECG graph? At the beginning of the ECG, we have discussed about three terms. One was electrocardiogram, the second electrocardiogram, and the third one is the ECG graph. The ECG graph is defined as a series of the waves, and deflection. The ECG graph is defined as a series of the wave during which the ECG graph is defined as a series of the waves or deflection which are seen in one cardiac cycle. The ECG graph is defined as a series of the waves or deflection during one cardiac cycle. For example, this is one cardiac cycle, series of the wave. This is the first wave, that is called P wave. After the P wave, another wave, small wave, that is called Q wave. So a series of the waves or deflection of the ECG graph. The ECG graph is defined as a series of the waves or deflection which are seen during one cardiac cycle. Under the topic of this nomenclature, after the ECG graph, we'll be discussing about the definition of the waves. What is the wave? When the needle of the ECG machine raising and falling over the ECG paper, they produce a pattern which is called wave. Or in other words, or a simple word, due to up and down of the needle of ECG machine over the ECG paper, produce a pattern which is called wave. Finally, due to deflection of the needle of the ECG machine over ECG paper, produce a pattern which is called wave. This was about the wave. How should I define the wave? Raising and falling of the needle of ECG paper, needle over the ECG paper, produce a pattern which is called wave. Or to up and down of the needle of the ECG machine, produce a pattern over the ECG paper, that is called wave. Finally, deflection of the needle over the ECG paper, produce a pattern which is called wave. This was about the wave. Right now we are talking about those ECG patterns which are made from atrial deprivation, septal ventricular deprivation, free wall ventricular deprivation, and ventricular deprivation, and U wave represent Purkinje fiber deprivation. Remember, each of these waves which are shown in ECG, each of these waves are shown or assigning by English alphabet letter. Remember, the P, T, U are always shown by capital letter. The P, T, and U are always shown by capital letter. But Q or S, it's represented either by capital letter or small letter. So remember, these waves, T, Q or STU. TU, they are English alphabet letters. They don't stand for anything, they are arbitrary English alphabet letters. And we have got two types of letters. P, T, U are constantly represented by the capital letters, while Q or S complex may be represented by capital letter or by small letter. By small letters. P, T, U are assigning or showing by capital letter. Q or S complex may be. So those waves which is above 5 millimeter, or the length of those waves which is above 5 millimeter, this wave are more than 5 millimeter. This wave should be signed or assigned by capital letter. Those waves which are less than 5 millimeter, it is shown
Must be shown.
by small letters. You should pay attention about that point. It is really a little bit tough to know the mechanism by which these QRS complex produce and assigning of the QRS complex. Right now, we will say again, each of these waves are shown by English alphabet letter, which don't stand for anything. They are arbitrarily English alphabet letter. Remember, the P, T, and U represent are always represent or show capital letters, especially P wave, T wave, and U wave should be represented by the capital letter. QRS complex can be represented either by capital letter or small letter. Those waves which are above 5 millimeter, this should be shown by capital letter. Those waves which are less than 5 millimeter, it is shown by small letter. For example, this Q wave is less than 5 millimeter, and the R wave is more than 5 millimeter. So the large wave should be assigned by capital letter. So this R wave should be assigned by capital letter because the R is larger than the Q wave. The R wave is more than 5 millimeter. So we should assign this QRS complex. This is the R wave is larger, it should be shown by capital letter. The Q wave is smaller, it should be by small q. So this complex is called QR complex. Right now we come to the next topic. In this QRS complex, the Q wave is larger, but the R wave is smaller. So the large wave should be assigned by Q wave, and when this wave is smaller, then it should be shown by the R wave. In this second complex, this is R wave and this is Q wave, S wave. Right now this R wave is more than 5 millimeter and larger than the S wave, so that the large wave should be assigned by capital letter R, and the S is smaller, it should be shown by small letter. The last one, in this complex, the R is smaller, the S is larger. So the larger wave should be assigned by capital letter, and the small letter should be assigned by small letter, which is R wave. Did you catch this one?
Yes, sir.
Then we'll be discussing about the significance of ECG deflection. Significance of ECG deflection. The first wave is called P wave. The first wave of the ECG is called P wave. This P wave represents atrial depolarization, or this P wave represent or reflecting atrial depolarization. This was first wave, round wave, positive wave, and with moderate conduction, this P wave is produced. So the first wave is called P wave. After the P wave, you are coming to the QRS complex. This QRS complex represents ventricular depolarization. But this QRS complex is presented as a single unit. But actually, they are made from 3 separate waves. The first one is Q wave, the second wave is R wave, and the third wave is called T wave. So, the atrial depolarization is represented by the P wave, or P wave represented atrial depolarization. This Q wave is made from 3 separate or independent waves. Q wave, the first Q wave, which can be for R wave, this should be, the Q wave is a wave which comes before the R wave, and the R wave is a wave which comes after the Q wave, and the S wave is a first wave which comes after the R wave. The P wave represents atrial depolarization. The Q wave represents septal ventricular depolarization. The R wave represents free ventricular wall depolarization. And the T wave represents ventricular depolarization. And if we have got here wave, U wave, this U wave represented Purkinje fiber. and Purkinje fiber. Again, P wave represents atrial depolarization. This is a first wave, this is a P wave. This P wave represents atrial depolarization. The Q wave represents septal ventricular, the QRS complex represents ventricular depolarization, but it made from three parts. The first one is a Q wave. Q wave comes before the R wave, or we see Q wave is the first negative wave which comes after the R wave. R wave is the first positive wave which comes after the Q wave. The S is the first negative wave which comes after the R wave. The QRS complex, again. So we also have a plan to discuss about the segment and interval, but today we have got a meeting in the upstairs. So right now this lecture was very short, but its concept is a little bit difficult. Now again we should define what is the ECG graph. The ECG graph is defined as a series of the waves or deflection which are seen during the one cardiac cycle. This is a typical pattern of a single typical, yeah. For example, this a series of the waves or deflection which are seen during the one cardiac cycle is called the ECG graph. P wave is represent atrial depolarization, the Q wave represents septal ventricular depolarization, the R wave represented the free ventricular depolarization, the S wave represent terminal portion of the ventricular depolarization, and the T wave represent ventricular depolarization, and the U wave represent Purkinje fiber cell repolarization. Now definition of the wave and assigning of the wave. How should I define the wave? As I mentioned before, when the needle of the ECG machine is raising and falling over the ECG paper, they produce a pattern which is called wave. Which is called wave. So each of these waves are assigned or shown by English alphabet letters. But remember, this single PQ. Remember these waves don't stand for anything. They are all literally English alphabet letter. But these three waves, P, T, U, are represented by capital letters. While QRS complex can be represented either by capital letter or small letter. So as I mentioned before, this Q is smaller and this R is larger. If the Q wave is less than 5 mm, you should assign this wave by small letters. If the wave is larger than the S wave or more than 5 mm, that is called that is shown by capital letter. This is shown by capital R. And this wave, the S wave is also smaller than the R wave. So we also the S wave should be shown by a small letter, and the R wave is shown by capital letter. And this one, in this complex, the Q wave is larger or more than 5 mm, and the R wave is smaller. So this large wave should be assigned by Q wave, and this small R wave should be represented by the small R wave. The next.
This one is larger.
Yes, the S wave is larger and the R wave is smaller. So the S wave more than 5 mm and the R wave less than 5 mm. So this S wave is represented by a capital letter, but this R wave is represented by the small letter. Another significance of ECG deflection. What does it mean, significance of ECG deflection? Right now again we come to this ECG graph, and now what is representing the P wave? What kind of wave it is? This is a small wave, round shaped wave, and this is the first positive wave which comes earlier than the others. And after the atrial, what is representing this QRS complex? Ventricular depolarization. But in fact it is separate three wave, but all of them are describing in a single unit. In the single unit. So this QRS complex is a single unit, and this is the first wave is called atrial depolarization, and after depolarization we see Q wave. What is representing Q wave? Septal ventricular depolarization and limb lead. And this Q wave comes before R wave. The Q wave is the first negative wave which comes before the R wave. R is the positive, first positive wave which comes after the Q wave. And S is a first negative wave which comes after the R wave. T wave. What is representing T wave? Reticular polarization. What is representing U wave?
Changes in
Changes in polarization.